Welcome to number 86 through 90 of my top 100 albums of all time. If you missed out on the first 10, please make sure you go back and check those videos out. And if you don't know what we're doing here, we have a video explaining this whole series. I'll link to that in the description, but stick around and see what my picks are for this installment. Number 90, Richard Houghten, Music for Drifters. I talk about Richard so much on this channel that you would think he sponsors it. But he doesn't sponsor it. He's just a good friend who happens to be multi-talented with his music and his vinyl creations. You may know him from me talking about his penchant for creating all sorts of interesting liquid-filled vinyl, laser etchings, holograms, vibronic etchings. You name it, he's figured it out. You can't think of it, he's figuring it out soon. He has proven himself to be one of the most innovative people in the vinyl community today. I am firm in my belief with that. But that isn't why he's on this list. He released an album this year, I know, fairly recent, called Music for Drifters, and when I first heard it, I was simultaneously slammed to the floor and lifted to the heavens. Now, I love everything he's ever done, whether it's him covering electronic music with his guitar on All Guitars 1 and 2, or he's working with Nicole and Brandon on his project A Cosmic Gift. But I think that for Richard's music and his vision, this is the most actualized version of it to date. And that's saying a lot because everything is great. This album feels like a turning point or mastery in the sound he's been pioneering for years now. The Brazilian style guitar mixed with these trip hop and down-tempo inspired melodies prove that it can really be an album for just about any listener. Every song on this album will surprise you with a different sound, and they're all great. This record is also one of Richard's artistic beauties. I managed to get all three of the variants of it. There's a blue, a clear, and a black. And I don't think you'll be able to see it necessarily in this video very well, but I'll put an overlay to show you that there are some rainbow etchings on there, laser etchings, that when it spins and a light is shown on it, there's no record that exists with this kind of visual beauty, and the music is just as good. They are becoming increasingly difficult to find, with people realizing A, how cool it is as a concept, and B, how great the album is. Can't wait to see what you put out next, Richard. Number 89, Freelance Wales, Weathervanes. Where's the record? Oh, I don't own it. Freelance Wales, Weathervanes is one of those albums that was not a critical success and went under the radar, unfortunately, and I'm glad it didn't pass me up. It's criminal to me that people didn't think this is one of the best indie pop, indie folk records of the late 2000s, because it is. Weathervanes came out in 2009, its follow-up, Deluvia, came out in 2012, and then the band kind of just disappeared off the face of the earth. Deluvia wasn't as good as Weathervanes. Weathervanes was perfect, Deluvia was a little forgettable, but we're not here to talk about their second album, we're talking about the first. Soft, emotive vocals, very similar to Sufjan Stevens at times. This album is rife with emotion. The melodies vary from up-tempo to down-tempo, but are always very pretty and very welcoming. I think that every cut on this record is worth listening to, and some of them will get stuck in your head for a very long time. Unfortunately, I don't own it, because Weathervanes goes in the aftermarket for triple-digit prices. Even though it wasn't a massive critical success, it does have this cult-like status. I have asked French Kiss, the label, multiple times, over 5 times, why they won't repress it, and they've never even dignified it with a response. So rude. One day I'm probably just going to shell out the coin to own it because it is that good, and I need to have it in my collection. Check it out. Number 88, Fort Vine, Stay Magical. You know, sometimes I ask myself if I only love the music of friends because they're friends and I'm trying to support them, and then TMR1 happened and I realized, no, it's not bias at all. It's just really good. I set out to press this record as the first record on my new record label, and I was overwhelmed by the fact that everybody just loved the music and showered them with praise, as they deserve. This is the follow-up to their first album, One and the Same. Trevor and Nina really take the lead with their incredible vocals just swirling around each other, unbelievable harmony, and just the most joyful, blissful, contemplative lyrics, simple lyrics, but you don't need them to be overly complex. They have their own riddles and mystique about them, but in a way that's very warm and comforting. I've spent a lot of time with this record, especially because they A, are two of my best friends, but B, this is the first record I chose for my label. This is our debut, so I obviously love this record to pieces. Indie folk that dips its toe in pop and soul throughout the album. It really kind of defies genre in that really nice way, and those buttery vocals are just... you gotta hear them to believe them. This pressing wasn't only a great success, this was an awesome gatefold. The jacket's a soft touch jacket, and the TMR logo's on the bottom, which is awesome. It makes me very happy. The record turned out visually beautiful, with this beautiful green with a white and yellow splatter on top to match the cover perfectly. But you know what? This album wasn't just a visual triumph. Sonically, people are saying it's one of the best sounding records in their whole collection. The mastering of this record was incredible, and honestly, at 45 RPM on a nice turntable is exactly how this record was meant to be heard. Number 87, Animal Collective, Merriweather, Post Pavilion. The first time I heard this record, simply put, I didn't get it. I was in college, I was transitioning from my high school music taste, a lot of the Killers and mid-2000s indie, stuff I still love, but I hadn't quite dipped my toe in stuff so experimental until I got to college and met my roommate Dylan, who was responsible for transforming my taste into stuff like The National, Radiohead, and Animal Collective. This was the album that bridged the gap in my mind to show me just how beautiful experimental albums can be. The first time I heard Brother Sport, the 6-minute closer to the album, I had no idea what I was listening to. The simultaneously symphonic and cacophonic sound of these psychedelic tones were unnerving to say the least. It was intriguing, frightening, and ultimately unlistenable on first listen. But Animal Collective was Dylan's favorite band, and I wanted to try to get into it, so I gave it another shot. A few weeks later, he played me the opening track to their album Sung Tongs, which was an album prior to this entitled Leaf House. That was the moment where it kind of clicked for me. The beauty in the tribal, repetitive pop drones just made sense. All the puzzle pieces kind of clicked into place for me, and I revisited Merriweather Post Pavilion, and justifiably I was blown away. When they screamed Matt for the first time in Brother Sport, it was like they were screaming into my soul. This album is a psychedelic masterpiece, and they've had a pretty long career, but this is definitely their most accessible. My Girls and Summertime Clothes have the making of wonderful singles, great entry points, while Bluish is one of the most beautiful, subtle love songs I've ever heard, if you dig into the lyrics behind the overly lush production. I believe this album is essential for anyone to give a try. You owe it to yourself to try it if you haven't heard it. You may love it, you may not, but I think this is your best chance to get into Animal Collective if you aren't into them already. No color pressing for this, but maybe one day. Number 86, Vampire Weekend, Father of the Bride. Also one of the most recent releases on this list, and it's on the list for a very specific reason, and I'll tell you why. While I can't confidently say where this lands in the discography for me if I was to rank all four, this one definitely brings their sound to an entirely new dimension. It's the furthest from their signature sound that they've established while still remaining true to who they are as a band. This album is long, clocking in at almost an hour. Danielle Haim from the band Haim is all over this record. At first I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. She was doing her Stevie Nicks type impression throughout the whole thing, and ultimately after giving it, 20 listens, I really love her additions to the album, adds a lot of color. This is the first album that Rostam, someone who's been a part of Vampire Weekend since LP1, didn't really have a hand in, except for the absolutely breathtaking single Harmony Hall, probably my favorite song of the year. And I don't know if that's a coincidence as to why that's my favorite song, but that being said, I was worried that not having Rostam would make them lose a little bit of the heart and soul that made them who they were. My worries are gone. If anything, it just allowed Ezra to kind of embrace his deep love for Grateful Dead type music and put out something that was full of heart and just different than everything else before. It also touches on just about every genre under the sun. Folk, country, alt-rock, jazz, soul, hip-hop, and even techno with Sympathy, my second favorite track on the album. The least Vampire Weekend song ever, and I am here for it. An hour-long album these days can very rarely keep my attention, and this one, there is not a single bit of filler on in my opinion. That's why I'm bold enough to put it on this list after just a few months of listening to it. I know this is going to be something that sticks with me for a very long time. I love this jacket. I managed to get one of the cool signed copies, and it's this embossed cover on the front, which is nice. And that globe on the front with the blue and green matches this beautiful Spotify variant, I'd say perfectly. Alright guys, that was this installment of my top 100 of all time. As usual, please leave a comment with your thoughts on my picks. If you love them, tell me why. If you haven't heard them, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on them. Make sure you guess on what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the list. We still have a lot of incredible records to get through. If these are low on my list, you can only imagine what's to come. Make sure you subscribe to Too Many Records with the notifications turned on so you don't miss any videos of this series or anything else I put out. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.